The Third Testament, Section 7, Chapter 28 to 31. The Developmental Path to Perfection. Chapter 30, The Development of the Spirit through Reincarnations. The Law of Development. 1. I tell you, man must know that his spirit has come to earth many times and he still has not been able to ascend by the way of my law to reach the top of the mountain. 77,55. 2. Since man has witnessed the unfolding of science and the discovery of that which he would not have believed before, why does he resist the natural development of the mind? Why does he harden himself to that which brings him to a standstill and puts him to sleep? Because he shied away from the prospect of eternal life. 118:77. 3. Understands, though creation is apparently complete, all things nevertheless develop, transform and perfect themselves. Can your spirit elude this divine law? No, my children. No one can say the last word about the spiritual, about science, or about life, for they are my works, which have no end. 79:34. 4. How many men think to possess spiritual greatness because of the knowledge they have attained, and yet for me are no more than some children who have stopped on the path of development, for they must consider that it is not only the unfolding of their intellect by which they can achieve the upward development of their spirit, but it must happen through the development of the totality of their being. And there are many abilities in man that must be developed to reach perfection. 5. This is the reason why I, as one of my laws of love and justice, used the reincarnation of the Spirit to grant him a longer way, which gives him all necessary opportunities to reach his perfection. 6. Every earthly existence is a short lesson, for otherwise the opportunities of a man to accomplish the fulfillment of my law would be too small. But it is imperative that you recognize the purpose of this life so that you may take from it the meaning and achieve its harmony, which is the basis of human perfection. So that you can progress to a higher plane of existence until you reach the spiritual life, where I have so many lessons ready for you, which I still have to teach you, and so many revelations, which I still have to give. 156:28-29. 7. While everything is constantly growing, changing, perfecting and unfolding, why should your mind remain still for centuries? 8. Since you have discovered and learned many things through science, the ceaseless development that exists in all beings of creation is not unknown to you. Therefore, I want you to understand that you must not leave your spirit in that retardation and standstill to which you have brought it for a long time, and that you must strive to achieve harmony with everything that surrounds you, so that a day may come for men when nature, instead of hiding its secrets, reveals them, and instead of the forces of nature being enemies to you, they become servants, co-workers, brothers. 305:6-8. The resurrection of the flesh, correctly understood. 9. Now the world shall know the truth about the resurrection of the flesh, which is the reincarnation of the Spirit. 10. Reincarnation means returning to the material world to be born again as a human being, the resurrection of the Spirit being in a human body to continue its mission. This is the truth about the resurrection of the flesh of which your ancestors spoke, giving interpretations as twisted as they were absurd. 11. Reincarnation is a gift that God has granted to your spirit so that it may never limit itself to the wretchedness of matter, to its ephemeral existence on earth, to its natural shortcomings, but the spirit, since it comes from a higher nature, may use as many bodies of matter as it needs to carry out its great tasks in the world. 12. Through this gift the Spirit proves his immeasurable superiority over flesh, over death, and over all earthly things, by overcoming death, one body after another, and surviving all, however many have been entrusted to him. He is the conqueror of time, of resistances, and of temptations. 290, 53-56. 13. How were you able to believe that on the day of judgment the bodies of the dead would rise up and unite with their spirit beings to enter into the kingdom of God? How can you interpret in this way what you were taught at other times? 14. The flesh is of this world, and it abides in it, while the spirit freely ascends and returns to the life from which it came. What is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of my spirit is spirit. The resurrection of the flesh is the re-embodiment of the spirit, and if some of you believe that this is a human theory and others of you believe that it is a new revelation, verily I say to you, I have begun to make this revelation known to the world since the beginning of mankind. You can find the proof of this in the text of the scriptures, which are a testimony of my works. This expression known from the old Christian creed was formulated at the Council of Nicaea, that is, at a time when the doctrine of reincarnation, which had been partially recognized until then, was condemned as heresy by Emperor Justinian. Thus the rebirth of the spirit in the flesh became the resurrection of the flesh. 15. But in this time this revelation has come to your spirit while it was on a higher stage of development, and soon it will be justly accepted as one of the most righteous and loving laws of the Creator. Reject the idea that you had of the day of judgment, for it is not one of your days because it is a period of time, and the end of the world is not that of the planet on which you live, but the end of the selfish life you have created on it. 76, 41-43. 16. The mystery of the resurrection of the flesh was solved through the revelation of the reincarnation of the Spirit. Today you know that the purpose of this law of love and justice is that the Spirit should be perfected, that he should never be lost, because he will always find an open door as an opportunity for his salvation offered to him by the Father. 17. My judgment upon every spirit by virtue of this law is perfect and inexorable. 18. I alone know how to judge you, because every fate is incomprehensible to men. Therefore no one is exposed or betrayed to others. 19. After the spirit beings have lost their way in their sins, after so many struggles and vicissitudes and after long wanderings, they will come to me full of wisdom because of their experiences, purified by pain, lifted up by their merits, tired from the long pilgrimage, but simple and joyful like children. 1. 61-64, x. The different stages of development of spiritual beings. 20. A long time ago your spirit has come out of me, nevertheless, not all of them have progressed in the same way on the spiritual path of development. 21. All destinies are different, although they bring you to the same goal. These tests are reserved for the one, those for the other. The one creature goes through one way, the other follows another. You have not all entered into existence at the same moment, nor will you all return at the same time. Some walk in front, others behind, but the goal awaits you all. No one knows who is near him or who is wandering far from him, because you are still too immature to possess this knowledge. You are human, and your vanity would be enough to ruin you. 10:77-78. 22. At all times, even in the far-off times of the history of mankind, you have had examples of men of high spirit. How could you explain that even in the earliest times there were men of developed spirit if it had not gone through successive reincarnations that helped it to develop upward? 23. The reason for this is that the spirit does not arise at the same time as the body shall, nor does the beginning of the human race coincide with that of the spirit. Verily, I tell you, there is not a single spirit that has come into the world without having existed before in the hereafter. Which of you can measure or know the time he lived in other spheres before he came to live on this earth? 156, 31-32. The knowledge of earlier earth lives and the own development level. 24. As long as the spirit is closely bound to the soul, it does not know nor can it know the merits which it has acquired in its former lives. But now he experiences that his life is eternity, an uninterrupted development in the desire to reach the summit. But today you do not yet know what height you have reached. 190, 57. 25. Your mind does not receive the impressions or memory images of your mind's past, because the body is like a dense veil that does not allow to penetrate the life of the mind. Which brain could receive the images and impressions that the mind has received in the course of its past? Which intelligence could grasp what is incomprehensible to it in connection with human ideas? 26. Because of all this, I have not yet allowed you to know who you are spiritually, nor how your past was constituted. 274, 54-55. 27. All my works are written down by me in a book called Life. The number of its pages is innumerable, its infinite wisdom will not be able to be reached by anyone but God, who is its author. But in it, on each of its pages, there is a short summary, in which the Father has presented each of his works in a comprehensible way, in order to make them comprehensible to every faculty of understanding. 28. Ye also constantly write the book of your life, in which all your works and all your steps in all your development will be written down. That book will be written in your conscience and will be the light of knowledge and experience with which you shall light the way of your younger brothers and sisters tomorrow. 29. You cannot yet show your book to anyone, because not even you know its contents. But soon it will become light in your being, and you will be able to show your fellow men the pages that speak of your unfolding, your atonement, and your experiences. You will then be an open book for men. 30. Bless those who make their mission their own. They will feel that they are climbing the ladder that Jacob saw in the dream, which is the spiritual path that leads beings to the presence of the Creator. 253, 6-8. Love as a necessity for spiritual development. 31. Just as your body, in order to live, longs for air, sun, water and bread, so also the spirit needs the living environment, the light and the food, which correspond to its nature. When it sees itself deprived of the freedom to soar up in the desire for its food, it becomes weak, withers and becomes dull, just as if a child were forced to remain always in its cradle and be locked up in its chamber. Its limbs would become lame, it would turn pale, its senses would become dulled and its abilities would wither away. 32. Recognize that the spirit can also be a lame one. I could even tell you that the world is full of spiritually lame, blind, deaf and sick people. The spirit that lives imprisoned and without freedom to develop is a being that does not grow, neither in wisdom, nor in strength, nor in virtue. 258, 62-63. 33. Verily, I tell you, what can lift you up is love, because wisdom, feeling, and exaltation dwell within you. Love is a summary of all the qualities of divinity, and God has kindled this flame in every spiritual creature. 34. How many lessons I have given you to learn to love. How many opportunities, lives and reincarnations has divine mercy given you. The lesson was repeated as often as it was necessary until it was learned. Once fulfilled, there is no need to repeat it, for it cannot be forgotten. 35. If you would learn my lessons quickly, you would not need to suffer any more, nor weep over mistakes. A being who on earth makes use of the lessons he has received on it may return to the world, but it will always be with greater maturity and in better living conditions. Between one life and the next there will always be a rest period, which is necessary to reflect and rest before starting the new day's work. 263, 43-45. Different reasons for reincarnations. 36. Verily, I tell you, in no epoch of human life has man lacked the knowledge of my law, for of the divine spark which is his conscience, there has never been a ray of light in his spirit, an inspiration in his mind, or a hunch in his heart. I tell you that in no age of human life has man lacked the knowledge of my law. 37. Nevertheless your spirit has returned to the hereafter with a dark bandage before your eyes, and I tell you the one who does not use the lesson that life contains in this world, in this valley of trials, must return to him to complete his reparation, and above all to learn. 184, 39. 38. On other worlds the spirit beings likewise enjoy freedom of will and sin and go astray, or they persevere in the good and in this way achieve upward development, as you do on earth. But when the predetermined time comes, those who are destined to live on this world come down to it to fulfill a noble task, and others to fulfill their duty of atonement. 39. But depending on how they will see this earth, it will present itself to some as paradise and to others as hell. Therefore, when these understand the mercy of their Father, they see only a wonderful life, sown with blessings and teachings of life for the spirit, a way that brings them closer to the promised land. 40. Some depart from this world with the desire to return, others do so with the fear of having to return. The reason for this is that your human nature has not yet been able to grasp the harmony in which you are to live with the Lord. 156, 33-34. 41. No one rebels against the idea of having to return to this planet in another body, nor do you believe that reincarnation is a punishment for the spirit. All spiritual beings destined to live on earth have had to pass through the law of reincarnation in order to reach their higher development and to carry out the task I have entrusted to them. 42. Not only the less developed spirit beings must incarnate again, but also the higher spirit beings come back one after another until they have completed their work. 43. Elijah is the greatest of the prophets who came to earth, but in spite of the great works he did and the great proofs he gave, he had to return to this world in another time, in another body and with another name. 44. This law of love and justice was unknown to men for a long time, for if they had known it earlier, they might have been confused. Nevertheless, the Father gave you some revelations and some indications which were the light that preceded this time to unravel all mysteries. 122, 25-28. The path to perfection. 45. Far is the way by which ye shall reach the fullness of light. No being has a longer way than that of the Spirit, on which the Father, the divine sculptor, who forms and smooths your spirit, gives it the perfect form. 292, 26. 46. Verily I say to you, in order that you may attain complete purity, your spirit will still have to be very much purified, in this world and in the spiritual. 47. As often as it is necessary for you, you will have to return to this planet, and the more often you miss the opportunities your Father grants you, the more you will delay your final entrance into true life and prolong your stay in the valley of tears. 48. Every spirit must show the progress and fruits of his development in every earthly existence, each time taking a firm step forward. 49. Be aware that the only good that benefits one's own well-being is that which comes from true love and mercy for others, and that which is selfless. 159, 29-32. 50. In man there are two powers that are always in struggle, his human nature, which is transitory, and his spiritual nature, which is eternal. 51. This eternal being knows very well that very long periods of time must pass before he can reach his spiritual perfection. It suspects that it has many lives and that it must go through many trials in them before it attains true happiness. The spirit forebodes that after the tears, the pain, and after having gone through physical death many times, it will reach that peak it has always sought in its longing for perfection. 52. The body, soul, on the other hand, the frail and small thing, cries, rears up, and at times refuses to follow the calls of the Spirit, and only when the Spirit has developed, is strong and experienced in the struggle with the flesh and all that surrounds it, does it succeed in dominating the body and manifesting itself through it. 53. Long is the pilgrimage of the Spirit, far is its way, manifold and very varied are its forms of existence, and all moments are its trials of another kind. But while he passes these, he rises, purifies himself, perfects himself. 54. On his journey through life he leaves behind a trail of light, therefore the whimpering of his body is often not important to the exalted spirit, because he knows that it is passing and he must not let events that seem small to him stop him on his journey. 55. For a moment he turns his attention to the weaknesses of his flesh, but he knows that he must not love too much something that lives only a short time and soon disappears into the bowels of the earth. 18, 24, 27-28. The Universal School of Life. 56. Since the beginning of mankind, the reincarnation of the Spirit has existed as a law of love and justice and as one of the forms in which the Father has shown His infinite grace. Reincarnation is not only a matter of this time, but of all times, and you should not think that I have revealed this mystery to you only now. Already in the earliest times there existed in man the intuitive knowledge about the reincarnation of the spirit. 57. But men who sought materialistic sciences and treasures of the world allowed themselves to be dominated by the passions of the flesh, hardening those fibers of the human heart by which the spiritual is perceived, so that men became deaf and blind to all that belongs to the spirit. 105, 52. 58. Before your creation you were in me, afterwards, as spiritual creatures, you were in the place where everything vibrates in perfect harmony, where is the essence of life and the source of the true light, from which I feed you. 59. Pain was not created by the Father in the times of which I speak to you. You had no reason to sigh, you had nothing to complain about, you felt heaven within yourselves, because in your perfect life you were the symbol of this existence. 60. But when you left that home, I gave your spirit a garment, and you sank deeper and deeper. Your spirit then developed step by step until it reached the plane of existence where you are now and where the light of the Father shines. 115, 4-5. 61. The goal of every spirit is to merge with divinity after its purification and perfection. For this I flood your way with light and give strength to your spirit, so that you rise step by step. Depending on the level of development you have attained when you leave this world, the spiritual home will be that which you inhabit in the beyond. For the universe was created as a school of perfection for the spirit. 195, 38. More detailed explanations are given in the text passages chap. 23,69, and chap. 58, 46. 62. If I had given you everything in this life, you would have no more desire to go up another level. But what you have not achieved in one existence you strive for in another, and what you do not achieve in that one promises you another, higher one, and so it continues step by step on the endless path of development of the spirit until all eternity. 63. When you hear my word, it seems impossible to you that your spirit should be able to attain such a great perfection, but I tell you that you doubt the high destiny of the spirit only because you consider only what you see with your material eyes, wretchedness, ignorance, malice. But this is only because the spirit is sick in some, paralyzed in others, others are blind and some are spiritually dead. In the face of such spiritual misery, you must doubt the destiny that eternity holds in store for you. 64. And so you live in this time of love for the world and for materialism. But already the light of my truth has come to you and has driven away the darkness of the night of a time which has already passed, and has announced with its dawn the coming of an age in which the Spirit will receive illumination through my teaching. 116, 17-18. 65. Many of you will have no new opportunity to return to earth to make amends for your transgressions. You will no longer possess the tool you have today, which is your body on which you lean. You must understand that coming into the world is a privilege for the spirit, but never a punishment. You must therefore use this grace. 66. After this life you will go to other worlds to receive new lessons, and there you will find new opportunities for further ascension and perfection. When you have done your duties as men, you will leave this world with satisfaction because you have fulfilled your task, and there will be peace in your spirit. 221,54, 55. 67. My voice is currently calling large crowds of people, because for many spiritual beings the end of their pilgrimage on earth is approaching. 68. That dejection, that horror, that sadness which they carry in their hearts are proof that they are already longing for a higher home, a better world. 69. But it is necessary that they live the last stage they are going through in the world in obedience to the instructions of their conscience, so that the trace of their last steps on earth may be blessed for the generations that come after them to fulfill their various tasks in the world. 276, 4. 70. This world is not eternal, nor does it need to be. Once this home no longer fulfills the purpose of existence that it now has, it will disappear. 71. When your spirit no longer needs the lessons that this life gives here, because they expect other, higher ones on another world, then, because of the light gained in this earth struggle, it will say, with what clarity I understand now that all the ups and downs of this life were only experiences and lessons that I needed to understand better. How long did that journey of life seem to me, as long as suffering depressed me. But now, when everything is over, how short and fleeting it seems to me in the face of eternity. 230, 47u. 72. Rejoice, human beings, think that you are flying birds in this world full of tears, wretchedness and suffering. Rejoice, for it is not your home for eternity, better worlds await you. 73. So when you part from this earth, do it without regret, then the sighs of pain, the troubles, the tears will remain here. You will say goodbye to this world, and you will rise up to those who await you in the heights of heaven. From there you will see the earth as a point in space that you will remember with love. 230, 51. The persuasive power of the doctrine of reincarnation. 74. The light of spiritualism now reveals to the world the truth, justice, reason and love inherent in the spiritual capacity for reincarnation. Nevertheless, the world will at first stubbornly fight this revelation and give it the appearance of a strange and false doctrine to instill distrust in people of good faith. 75. Useless and futile will be the efforts made by denominations to keep their believers in the entrenched tracks of old beliefs and outmoded belief systems. For no one will be able to stop the divine light, which penetrates to the bottom of human thinking and awakens the spirit for an age of revelations, divine inspiration, the illumination of doubts and mysteries, spiritual liberation. 76. Neither will anyone be able to stop the flood that will form humanity when it sets out in the desire for its freedom of thought, spirit, and faith. 290, 57-59. Reincarnation paths of a spirit. 77. I call all pilgrims on earth, that they may hear my voice, which invites them to ascend and to possess eternal life. 78. On this day when the divine word is manifested, make use of his word and let yourselves be enlightened by it, for in knowledge is the light and your salvation. 79. If my law teaches you morality, righteousness, and order in all the acts of your life, why seek ye opposite ways, whereby ye cause yourselves pain? But when you depart for the hereafter and leave your body on earth, You weep because you have loved this shell too much. 80. When you feel that the body no longer belongs to you and that you must continue on the path of development until you come to me, I tell you, my child, what do you have to show me? Have you lived on earth in fulfillment of my commandments? 81. But you, ashamed and despondent because you have no gift of love for him who loves you so much and has granted you so many things, have forged chains that depress your spirit and it appears lightless, weeping and lamenting over itself because it has lost grace. He hears only the voice of the Father calling him. But since he has not developed and does not feel himself worthy to come to him, he stops and waits. 82. Time passes, and the spirit hears the voice again, and completely filled with his suffering, he asks who is speaking to him, and this voice tells him, awake. Do you not know where you have come from and where you are going? Then he lifts up his eyes, sees an immeasurably great light, by the brightness of which he feels poor. He realizes that before he was sent to earth he already existed, already loved by the Father from whom the voice emanated, and who now, seeing him in the deplorable state he is in, is suffering because of him. He recognizes that he was sent to various homes to go through the way of battle and to receive his reward through his merits. 83. And the child asks, if before I was sent to earth I was your very beloved creature, why did I not stand firm in virtue and had to fall, suffer and toil to come back to you? 84. The voice answered him, all spirit beings have been subjected to the law of development, and in this way my Father Spirit guards them forever, and he is pleased with the good works of the children. However, I have sent you to earth so that you make out of it a battlefield of spiritual perfection, not a whale's place of war and pain. 85. I have told you that you should multiply, that you should not be barren. But when you return to the spiritual valley, you bring no harvest, you only lament and come without the grace with which I have endowed you. Therefore, I send you once more and say to you, purify yourselves, seek that which you have lost, and work for your spiritual ascent. 86. The spirit returns to earth, seeks a small and delicate human body to rest in it and begin the new life journey. He finds the small child body assigned to him and uses it to atone for his violations of my law. With knowledge of the cause, the spirit comes to earth. He knows that he is the breath of the Father, and knows the commission he brings from him. 87. In the first years he is innocent and keeps his purity, he remains in contact with the spiritual life. After that he begins to know sin, sees up close the pride, arrogance, and insubordination of men to the righteous laws of the Father, and the inherently unruly flesh begins to be defiled with evil. Tempted to fall, he forgets the mission he brought to earth and sets out to do works that are against the law. Mind and body, soul, taste the forbidden fruits, and when they have fallen to perdition, the last hour surprises them. 88. Again the spirit finds itself in the spiritual habitat, weary and bowed down by the burden of its guilt. There he remembers the voice that once spoke to him and still calls him, and after he has shed many tears, feeling lost without knowing who he is, he remembers that he has been to that place before. 89. The Father, who created him with so much love, appears on his way and says to him, who are you, where do you come from and where are you going? 90. The Son recognizes in that voice the word of him who gave him being, intelligence and abilities, the Father, who forgives him again and again, purifies him, takes him away from darkness and leads him to the light. He trembles, for he knows that he stands before the judge, and says, "Father, my disobedience and my guilt with you are very great, and I cannot expect to live in your kingdom, for I have no merits." Today, having returned to the spiritual valley, I see that I have only accumulated guilt, which I must atone for. 91. But the loving Father shows him the way once more. He returns to the flesh and belongs again to mankind. 92. But now the Spirit, already experienced, makes the physical shell, soul, more powerfully docile, in order to assert itself and obey the divine commandments. The fight begins. He fights the sins that bring man down and wants to use the opportunity that has been granted to him for his redemption. Man fights from beginning to end, and when the white hair on his temples begins to gleam and his formerly resistant and strong body begins to bend under the weight of the years and loses its strength, the spirit feels strong, more mature and experienced. How great and repulsive sin seems to him! He turns away from it and reaches his goal. Now he waits only for the moment when the Father calls him, for he has come to the conclusion that the divine law is just and the will of God perfect, that this Father lives to give life and salvation to his children. 93. When the last day came, he felt death in his flesh and felt no pain. He departed silently and devoutly. He saw himself in spirit, and as if he had a mirror in front of him, he saw himself beautiful and radiant with light. Then the voice spoke to him and told him, "Son, where are you going?" And he, knowing who he was, went toward the Father, and let his light flow into his being, and said thus, "O Creator, O all-encompassing love, I come to you to rest and give you fulfillment." 94. The account was settled, and the spirit was sound, pure, and without the chains of sin, and saw before him the high reward that awaited him. 095. After that he felt that he was merging with the light of that Father, that his bliss was increasing, and he saw a place of peace, a holy land, felt a deep silence, and rested in Abraham's bosom. 33, 14-16.